This Week in Economics from WBRN Radio and on the Bostonred Network. Numbers man here from the Jerry Pippin broadcast booth. We go merrily along. The date here is the 13th of January 2019. I believe we stand at about 515 as far as the number of programs we've produced over the years, which is quite a collection in terms of the economic history of the U.S. and the global history of economics. We started this in 2008, I believe, was our first program there. So we've been rolling a little over 10 years, almost 11 years, in various forms. Starting out, we partnered at the time with Cranston Econometrics, and now it is Cranston Analytics. But they're the same. They just changed their name, and we decided we would take a little different approach. We would produce our own models to bring out a more accurate picture at that time of the economic situation. And many of the concepts that we and others pioneered are now included in the big data metrics of the Federal Reserve and many other analysts that have analytic houses, I should say, that have appeared over the years. And many of those at one time, the economics.com was one of the primary ones there. Dr. Mark Zanti out of the Philadelphia area there, and now he is part of Moody's Analytics, or they are Moody's Analytics. And then there's hundreds of others that have appeared on the scene that were, say, not in business 5 years ago. Thus, we have better data sets now than we've had in any time in the discipline known as economics. For some, the dismal science. There are, of course, divisions between macro, which we do, and the micro people between the academic and the working economist. But overall, if we look at it, it's much better now than it was. There are a lot of good academic papers out there, working papers. Although the Bureau of Economic Analysis is furloughed, quite literally, the Labor Department is putting out the work that they have done. And we'll get to that. We have GDP and we have the job numbers in terms of quits hires from November. And we'll look at the progress that working people have made. There's an interesting article from the Bloomberg people. So we'll be looking at articles from Bloomberg, from Reuters, from the Washington Post. Some of that is in our commentary here, and the BBC. So a well-rounded situation, and we'll go to first and secondary sources in some instances. First of all, on the 13th of January, we have almost 1 million workers furloughed that work directly for various federal agencies, about 25% of them, including the TSA, and it's across the board there. As we mentioned, the Bureau of Economic Analysis, and even parts of the Homeland Security people, except for non-essential people there, are out. The IRS has been some accommodation there. People that do certain mortgage thing, they are the mortgage verification clerks, we'll call them, have been called back. Now, some of those people are people that are contractors. They make it a range, we'll say, of about $12 to a little under $20 an hour. So those people will be back, and they span everywhere from Kansas City to Ogden, Utah, the center there. But as far as the consumers are people and their tax refunds, that has not been satisfied. So thus we have an imbalanced type of situation created here all around a quote-unquote wall. And that changes from day to day also. DJ Trump announced he would do an emergency order, which could come, or there will be just a standoff. This is the longest one in the history of the American nation. And what does it mean? Well, in actuality, as some commentators have said and lawmakers, eventually the government will reopen. Will it take weeks more, months more? Well, possibility, yes. And we've looked at some recent polling there. More of the public, not a substantial number, are now blaming the Trump administration. This always happens in these types of instances. We did a show on the political production, we'll call it, an episode on the political side called The Smorgasbord Shutdown. It was not originally cast as us. A number of people have cast it as such. There are some departments that are shut down. There are other departments, roughly about 75%, have their budgets intact until September of this year, 2019. But those that do not are the targets. Many of them are services that ordinary people use. The National Park System, for one, the Statue of Liberty, the Grand Canyon, been taken care of by the state of New York and the state of Arizona, respectively. When all of these things count up, now the big question is now these almost 1 million workers will start showing up in the unemployment statistics. And that is a matter, and of course we've looked at it, and we'll look at that somewhat in the minute here, as we don't have the employment situation here today, but we look at the household survey and the establishment surveys. They will come out, and they will start to show these actual redundancies. Now, what basically happens there, people that are not working, many of these people have filed now for unemployment insurance. That will kick in. Congress has also passed legislation that will give them a retroactive pay at a certain time in history. In other words, when the government restarts. And tremendous costs, roughly about $30 billion a week, some of the estimates out there, that it costs for every week the government is shut down. We'll get the final figures, but they are tremendous, and it does take time to restart the government as such. And you also have the so-called independent contractors. There are many of those, and they are in various departments that have been laid off. Most of those people are not getting any pay. Some are working, some are not. The TSA, that's the people that check baggage, etc., many of those people have been calling in sick because they're working without an income. And from, I think, Tex Allen, he's head of the Secret Service, it was talking about, it sent out a memoranda about the stress that involves this layoff. Let's just call it what it is. And those are people that protect the president and other quote-unquote officials. Not a good thing at all. They have those people under stress. The Coast Guard has sent out a list of things that do, including having garage sales. And one lady that is a contractor, and we put this on our Facebook page, the Bostonred Facebook page. She's having a virtual garage sale. She's dealing in some rare books, etc. And there are many other people that are having sales. There are companies from Verizon that have special numbers for government workers to call to arrange payments. You can't arrange a payment when you don't know when you're going to be paid, so as not to preclude service. Saloons and what have you are having all-day happy hours for federal workers that have any money to spend, or for that matter, to attract other federal workers that are still working in Washington and other areas. So that is some of the bare facts involved in this particular situation. And we at this mic had talked about the psychological implications of various things. And this is starting to cast a little shadow, not much shadow, because, again, it's kind of remote. If you don't live in Maryland, Virginia, or Washington, D.C. area, you don't see as much. But these departments are scattered throughout the country. Workers are scattered throughout the country, and particularly national parks. It's surprising how many people visit national parks in the winter time. It's a big season. Trash is stacking up across from the White House. Now, this is not anecdotal information. This is brought to you by various news services that have taken pictures of it. Let's go now to the analytics. This is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics via the Labor Department. Dated the 8th of January, the number of job openings fell to 6.9 million the last day of November, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported. Over the month, hires edged down to 5.7 million. Quits edged down to 3.4 million, and total separations were unchanged at 5.5 million. Within separations, the quits rate and layoffs and discharge rates were unchanged at 2.3% and 1.2% respectively. This release includes estimates of number of job openings, hires, and separations in the non-farm sector by industry and for geographical region. Job openings fell again to 6.9 million. That is a negative 243,000. The job opening rate was at 4.4%. The number of jobs openings decreased for the private sector at 237,000, and little change for government job openings. An increase in transportation, warehousing, utilities, that was 40,000. The job opening levels decreased in a number of industries, with the largest decrease in other services, 66,000, construction, 45,000 job openings in the western region. Hires edged down 5.7 million. That's 208,000 in November. The hires rate was at 3.8%. The hires rate level fell for private jobs at 236,000. Was little change for government. The hires increase in the federal government at 8,000, but decreased in professional business services at 167,000. The number of hires decreased in the South region. Separations included quits, layoffs, and discharge. Now remember, this is November. This is not December when the real action started with the government shutdowns. The total separations is referred to as turnovers. Quits are generally voluntary separation initiated by workers. Therefore, the quits rate can serve as a measurement of workers' willingness or ability to leave jobs. Layoffs and discharges are involuntary separations initiated by the employer. Other separations include separations due to retirement, death, disability, transfers to other locations of the same firm. The total separations was little change at 5.5 million in November. The total separation rate was at 3.7%. The number of total separations was little changed. For private and government, the total separations decreased in professional and business services, a negative 122,000. In accommodations and food services, negative 88,000. Number of separations was little change in all other regions. The number of quits edged down to 3.4 million. That is a negative 112,000. The quits rate was 2.3%. Quits edged down for private at 22,000 was a little changed for government. Quit rates in professional and business services at 84,000. In accommodation, food services, 62,000. The number of quits was little change in the 4 regions. Layoffs and discharges was little change in November at 1.8 million. Layoffs and discharge rate was 1.2%. Now remember, this is in the holiday season here also. The layoffs and discharge level was little change for private and government. Layoff and discharge increase in education services at 17,000. The number of layoffs and discharge little change in the 4 regions. The number of other separations was little change, 332,000 in November. Other separations include arts, entertainment, and recreation plus 5,000, in federal government plus 4,000, but decrease in professional and business services, 22,000 that made up for net change in employment. Large numbers of hires and separations occur each month throughout the business cycle. Net employment changes result in relationships between hires and separations. Over a 12-month period ending in November, hires totaled 68 million and separations 65 million, yielding a net employment gain of 2.4 million. These include workers who may have been hired or separated more than once during the year. And we'll append this. I won't go into a lot of it here. But if we look at this as in thousands, the total here in November of job openings of 5,931. That was in November 2017. And 7,131 in October of 2018, and November 6,888. This was the totals. These were the number of job openings, and in November of 2017, number of hires was effectively 5,505,000, and in October was 5,928,000, and in October 5,710,000. Separations again at 253. That was a year ago, and in October this year it was 5621, and in November 507. And then by industries here, in construction it was 225. That'd be 225,000. In that was last year in November. This year 323,000. And these were the openings. And in November 278. And we go down to manufacturing in 2017. 391. In October of 2008 it was 504. These were openings, and in November was 593. You can see a pattern of things going down here. In manufacturing, durable goods at 248, and in October this year at 318 and 324 in November. Non-durable goods at 143, that was a year ago in November of 2017, and 187 this year in October, and 169. I'm just highlighting some of the categories here. And professional business services, that would have been a year ago at 976, and at 1227, and that'd be 1,176 here. Healthcare at 995, and this year in October it would have been, that'd be October 2017. It'd be 138 and 128, over $1 million there. In government, 71, that would have been in 2017, and 107. You can see that going up, and back in November to 86. Now the percentages here, total total would be 3.9. That would have been 2017. In 2018, that would have been in October, 4.5 and 4.4 in November. Private 2.4 in 17, 2.9 in October of 2018, and 4.7 in November of 2018. We just sort of going over these. Information 3.1, that would be in 17, 5.1 in October of 18, and then down to 4.6. You can kind of see that some of these industries were going up, some going down. Wholesale trade 2.8 in October of 2017, 3.5 in October of 2018, and in November 2.8, cooling down a bit. We just make certain of one little thing here. There we go. Okay, level by industry. These were the job openings, hires and separations. I didn't do this. Well, 3.8 would be your job openings a year ago, and if you go to these percentages here, now let's just do this. In government, in November of 2017, you had 2.2 was the job openings. 2018 in October, 2.7, and in November, 2.7. That was government. In the federal, 2.5, 3.2. Now remember, this is in November, and 2.7 state and local. In November of 2017, 1.5. In October 2018, 1.9. A little better in November at 2.2. These were the openings, not the hires. In November of 2017, 1.6, 1.5 in October, and 1.7 in November. Separation rate, we'll do this. This is for state and local governments, 1.6, 1.6. The same, and 1.7 in November, slightly higher there. And we look at the federal government, the total separation in November of 2018 was 1.2. In October was 1.1. That was for the federal government. And hiring level is the total number of additions to the payroll occurring at any given time. This is some of the technical note here for part-time, permanent, short-term, and seasonal workers. Workers recalled in a location after layoffs lasting more than 7 days, which will apply now to the federal workers. Separations is the total number of employment terminations occurring at any time during a reference month there, so that is their situation sampling and methodology. Won't get much into that, but the establishments are drawn from a universe of 9.1 million established, compiled a quarterly census of employment wages, programs which include employers subject to state unemployment insurance laws and federal agencies subject to unemployment compensation for federal workers. And this is how this information is gathered. You go with just a little bit there. Job openings and rates by industry. This is seasonally adjusted. In November, that was 5931 of 2017. In July of 2018, it was 7.77. In August, 723 there. And in October, 7131. This is the total. And in November was 6888. In other words, 6.88. These would be the levels there, and the rates. We went over this once before, but 3.9 in November 2017. in November of 2018. 4.4 was the rate. We won't go with some of the others. You can look at the charts, hiring levels and rates by industry, regional, seasonally adjusted there. If you look at the number of people that were hired here, the total 505, that was in November 2017. In November here, it was basically, well, a little bit more, 5,710. And the rate in November, 3.8 there. So, see these as hires and quits, not bad last year, but again, and regions. We had not had this before. In the Northeast, 830. And let's see, I believe this is November. I have to look at the top of my chart. I go back up here. Yeah, this is November. Okay. November 2018 in the Northeast. We are at 747. You can see a decrease there. And we get into percentages. We end up with 2.7. In the South, 4.2. And this came from 4.0. In the Midwest, 3.9. That would have been 2017. And 3.9 is how we finished up in November of 2018. In the West, 3.4. And we started this out at, it looks like 3.4 here in the West. And just make certain that okay. These are the rates, the last column being the West. So in other words, it's basically the same thing. Here, seasonally adjusted by industry and by region of the country. We went through this, and so it appears the West is a little bit slower than the Northeast here. We look at some of the figures, and some of these are season adjusted, not season adjusted. We won't really go through those, whether they are or they're not. In other words, this is a quits rate. We thought we'd bring that to you. And quits, hires, separations. And we have even information here. I don't think we'll put this up, but from January of 2011 to June of 2018, these are errors in hiring, separations, layoffs, and discharges. Looking at that. Okay, we'll go now to GDP. I do believe. Yeah. Oh, these are job openings and labor turnover. This was issued on the 8th of, hopefully this is a different one. Oh, oops, sorry about that. Yeah, we'll go to GDP in a minute here. We'll get there. The Consumer Price Index. I don't know why we're getting into GDP here. We're getting ahead of ourselves. Nonetheless, this was issued on the 11th of January, 2019. The Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers, they declined 0.1% in December on a seasonally adjusted basis after being unchanged in November. The Bureau of Labor Statistics there. Over the last 12 months, all items increased 1.9% before the seasonally adjusted situation here. Seasonally adjusted decline in all items was caused by a sharp decrease in gasoline prices. They fell 7.5% in December. The decline more than offset increase in indexes, including shelter, food, and other energy components. The energy index fell at 3.5% as gasoline and fuel oil indexes fell, but the index for natural gas and electricity increased. The food index increased also 0.4% in December. The index for all items, less food and energy, increased 0.2% in December. The same increase in October and November. along with the index for shelter, the index for recreation, healthcare, home furnishings, and operations all increased in December. This means inflation is creeping in. While indexes for airfares, cars, trucks, and motor vehicles and insurance all declined. The all items increased at 1.9% for 12 months ending in December. It was the first time the 12-month change has been under 2% since November of 2017. The index for all items less food and energy rose at 2.2%. We look at this because the food and energy are highly volatile, and that would also depend particularly on the energy costs. If it's in gasoline, is how many people are using that, how many miles driven, etc. Anyway, the food index rose at 1.6% over the past year, while energy declined at 0.3%. We'll append this also. Let me just get this up a little bit here. Seasonally adjusted changes from preceding months. Just looking at some of the items here. In June, we had 1.10%. In December of 2018, we had a negative 0.1%. That's for all items. For food, it was a... let me just make sure what I'm here. 0.4% was the increase for food. Food away from home at 0.3%. Food at home. I'm sorry. Food away from home at 0.4%. The gasoline was a negative 7.4%. This is all in December of 2018. Electricity at 0.7%, or energy. Well, just a minute here. Or energy services at 1.4. Electricity at, this is year. Okay, 0.7% was correct. This was for electricity, utilities, gas service, etc. 5.6% was the increase in December. New vehicles, of course, they were down. How you come into just zero. Used and trucks at a negative 0.2%. Apparel at zero. Transportation services at a negative 0.2%. Medical services at 4%. In other words, they were rising in December. Food index rose 0.4% in December, the largest increase since April of 2014. Food at home rose, and now we get it. Anyway, at 0.3%, as the index for fruits and vegetables increased 1.7%. The index for fresh fruit rose at 1.3%, and fresh vegetables increased. The biggest increase here at 2.6%. For cereals and bakery goods, that was a 0.4% increase. That increase for dairy and related products and for non-alcoholic beverages, 0.3%. The index for meat, poultry, fish, and eggs was unchanged, while major food groups index declined, and other food at home fell 0.3%. Index for food away from home rose 0.4%. Index for food at home rose 0.6% over the past year, with the four of the six major grocery store food indexes increasing over the span. Food away from home index rose 2.8% over the past 12 months. The energy index fell at 3.5% in December, following a 2.2% decline in November. However, other major energy components rose in December, with index of natural gas increasing. This is a fairly large increase at 5.6%, and electricity rising at 7%. percent there. The energy index fell 0.3 over the past 12 months, representing the first 12-month decline in the energy index since the period starting in September 2016. The gasoline index declined 2.1% over last year, offsetting increase in other components, as we just said here. All items less food and energy increased 2%. Shelter index, a very important one, increased 0.3% in December, the same increase as in the prior month. The index for rent and owner equivalent rent both increased 0.2%, while the index for lodging away from home rose at 2.7%. Recreation rose in December at 0.6%. Medical care index rose at 0.3% in December, with major component indexes mixed. The index for hospital services rose at 0.5%. Physician services are unchanged. The index for prescription drugs declined at 0.4%. Index for household furnishings and operations rose 0.3%. In December, the education index 0.2%. Airline fares fell at 1.5% in December, following a 2.4% decline in November. Index for used cars, trucks in Europe, called lorries anyway, it fell at 0.2% after rising in October and November. The motor vehicles insurance index fell at 0.2%, its second decline. The CPI, not seasonally adjusted, this is for urban consumers. It increased at 1.9% over 12 months to a level of 251.33 for a month. The index decreased 0.3% seasonally adjusted. The consumer price index for urban earners and clerical workers increased at 1.8% over 12 months to an index level of 244.786. The chained consumer price index for urban consumers increased at 1.8% over the 12 months. The for the month, the index declined at 0.3 on a not seasonally adjusted situation. Year in review, December to December, the CPI rose 1.9% in 2018. A small increase in 2.1% in 2016 and 17, but larger than the increase in years from 2012 to 2015, also slightly larger than the 1.8 annual increase over the past 10 years, a decade. The food increased at 1.6% in 2018. The same in 2017. The index for food at home increased 0.6%, following a 0.9% increase in 2017. For the six major food store groups increased in 2018. The index for cereal, bakery goods increased, rising 1.7% after declining in 16 and 17. Fruits and vegetables index rose 1.5%, increased to 1.6% in 2018. The index for non-alcoholic beverages, tonic sodas, etc., increased 1.4% in 2018 after being unchanged in 17. The index for food for other food at home increased in 2018, rising 0.2%. The index for meat, poultry, and eggs declined, falling 0.4% after rising 2.8%. That was the last year in a year before last, actually, in 2007. In 2017, we're getting ahead of ourselves here. The dairy-related products index fell slightly in 2018 at 0.1%, 4 year in a row decline. The index food away from home rose 2.8% in 18 after a 2.5% increase the prior year. So it's been going up for eating out. The energy index fell slightly, declining 0.3% after rising 6.9. That was in 17 as opposed to 18. Healthcare index rose 2% in 2018, slightly larger than the 1.8% in 2017. The index for hospital services really went up at 3.7%, while physician service index increased 0.6%. The index for prescription drugs, however, fell 0.6%. The education index increased 2.6% in 2018 after a 2% rise in 2017. The index for communications declined at 1.8%. Its ninth consecutive year decline. The recreation index rose at 1.2%, and personal care increased at 1.8%. And the index for airfares, I think we reported this, decreased for the sixth year, and we see a lot of discount airliners coming online now, fell at 2.6%. The apparel index declined for the sixth consecutive year, decreasing at 0.1%. Let's look at the progress of workers here. Our time is moving a little faster than I'd anticipated. And see if we can... We'll incidentally have a special report on farms and the Trump administration, and see exactly where we are there. And this is from the Bloomberg service, if we can find it here. Here we go. This is by Barry Britholmes on the on the 7th of January. Decent wage gains are showing up in paychecks. That should continue for a while. This is his article here. Last week I discussed things that got wrong. Well, we didn't see that one. But seeing higher wages coming wasn't especially a popular view as recent as 2016. After 2 years of workers being seeing modestly bigger paychecks, it looks like we are now at the part in the so-called business cycle when steady and large gains show up. More evidence from this can be found in the jobs report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics on Friday. Workers have an average gain of in hourly of 3.2%, well above the 2.4% during the past 5 years. Wages have risen, and the trend is likely to persist. Minimum wage increase in 2018. 18 states raised their minimum. In addition, 22 cities. Some of these increases are a result of scheduled incremental increase by states. 17 states have minimum wages indexed to inflation, while New York City was the first to set a minimum wage for Uber and Lyft drivers. Competition for workers, even more minimum without minimum wage, aggressive competition there. We have some of this. Costco raised their rate to $14 an hour, at Target to $12, and Walmart at $11. Disney reached a deal with its union for a $15 an hour minimum. That is at Disneyland in California, although the higher rate won't reach Disney World in Florida till 2021. Amazon made headlines in October when it raised its minimum hourly for all U.S. workers at $15 an hour. The move affected 200,000 workers, plus 100,000 seasonal holiday workers. Job openings radius in 2009, there was 6.6 job seekers for every opening. Today, there is less than one person looking for work for every opening, meaning there are more vacant positions than there are job seekers. Well, that would depend on what regions you're in. And getting off the sidelines, as noted last year, companies need to find ways, again, with higher pay and the like. And he's going back to Bureau of Labor Statistics show that the unemployment rate has rise from, 3.9 from 3.7. Doesn't mean very much. But because people are being fired, 260,000 people, probably a good number, have abandoned the job market, entered the labor pool, and the workforce participation rate is high at 63.1, and it's the highest in the past 5 years. Won't get much higher than that. We'll see. Finally, let's see, unreformed supply-siders to punch out one final topic. There is little or no evidence that tax cuts and the Jobs Act have much impact on wages. Certainly workers haven't seen such haven't seen the absurd $4,000 per worker windfall Trump's economic advisors and political wizards made before the tax cut was passed. Bloomberg opinion column, this is Noel Smith, observed there's no sign that the tax cuts are trickling down to real wage cuts. They're not. So the tax cut, you don't hear any more about it, and obviously there are reasons that you don't hear any more about it. It is, as they say, pretty much done. As far as, let me just, all right, these are some more opinion columns here. This is Bloomberg, yeah. He haven't said anything about Brexit yet, but we'll wait on that one. And this is more policy stuff here from yeah. All right, here we go. And we see if we have anything really sharp here as far as we don't. Not very much at all. Let's see. Well, let me look at the time. We'll look at the commodities while we're here at Bloomberg. I think we will. The Bloomberg Commodity Index at 0.37. That is the change in the Bloomberg Commodity Index. The UBS Index, a negative 3.14. The Reuters Jeffers, the change there is a negative 2.9%, and the Reuters International, a negative 3.4%. And the energy index down at $1. This is West Texas crude. T-Boo Pickett would be jumping for joy here at $51.59. And Brent crude down $1.20 at $60.48. The gasoline index down $3 there. Home heating oil down $2.64. Gold can be had. This is on the Comdex at $1,289.50. The change there is $2.10 on the spot. Change is $3.60 looks like at $1,290.25. Silver at $15.66. Copper, copper at the change $2.45. Platinum down $10.20. And let's see, corn is up $2. Wheat is up $5.75. Unbelievable there. Cocoa is down $13. We see that. And cotton is down 36 cents. Live cattle, no pork bellies here at 45 cents there. So, just, these are all. Soybeans up $3.50. We see that going on here. This is some of the agricultural stuff here. And we already looked at cocoa. Coffee, down 40 cents. And got coffee. Orange juice, down $1.20. Well, I get something new in here every day. 36 cents for cotton. Wool, nothing there. I hadn't done wool before. Lumber is down $3.20. Rubber, that's in Tokyo, is down 30 cents. Ethanol, we haven't looked at it in a long time, up 2 cents. And these are all cattle. Oh, here we go. Pork belly is the best we can do. Cattle, live cattle up, 45 cents. Feeder cattle down 17 cents. And lean hogs down 50 cents. That's close as we can get to pork bellies there. Love that. This is from the Bloomberg people, and let's see, we can get to where are the markets? Well, we'll do that at the BBC. We'll get over there in a minute here. Headline here: U.S.-China speed dating is enough to tame global headwinds. U.S. core inflation. Whole study as energy drags down the main indexes. That's basically what we've been talking about here. U.S. retailers, UK retailers, mall, a wave of store closures. U.S. recession, high risk hits 6-year high, and trade war, and that. We'll look at this one. Powell, Williams reject slowdown language at the Fed meeting. I get this is on the 11th here. This is on Bloomberg. Hadn't looked at this before. Federal Reserve Chair Lawrence Powell and New York Fed John Williams were amongst policymakers who in 2013 urged against referring to a government shutdown. The central bank's post-meeting statement stance that may have implications today. Transcripts and materials of 2017 released on a Friday. The customary 5-year lag showed that the Fed staff had postponed leading the October 2013 statement, with Senate saying that the month's shutdown and data delay may have made the evolution of economic conditions during the interim period somewhat more difficult to assess. And we agree on that. While the minutes of the meeting released at the time didn't mention that the officers considered and rejected reference to the shutdown. Williams, who was at the San Francisco Fed at the time, spoke first during the discussion on the statement, called for deleting the proposed line, saying it put too much emphasis on the role of government shutdown, both in terms of economic outlook and our own decision-making. Speaking towards the end of the debate, Powell, a governor at the time, also urged leaving it out. Ben Bernanke, the Fed chair, he was there from 2006 to 2014, said he didn't personally think the sentence is all that harmful. It does explain why the meeting had been sort of not in some sense as an active meeting as otherwise had been. Given the sense of the committee, he proposed scrapping, this is Dr. Bernanke, to the shutdown. Powell became chair in February. He's been around for a while. Extensive as an extended shutdown should show up in the data pretty clearly, and the Fed will have a less clear picture of growth without some key figures from the Department of Commerce. It shows up there very, very quickly. Let's get to the retailers here. We try to get a wave of store closures. We have some closures here. Incidentally, the proposed bailout, we'll call it, by the equity company of Sears, and Sears involves 60,000 workers. They're looking at it. Will they just liquidate, or what they will do? More than 20 UK retail chains instructed the accountancy Deloitte Touche LLP in the past 2 months to assess whether they are able to restructure their debt. That's from the Sunday Times. The rest, some restaurant chains there. Anyway, this is basically what is going on here or not going on here. This is in the UK. That is sort of the thing that is going many, many places. U.S. core inflation whole study. This is on the 11th of December. Katia de Mivier, I think is her name. Key measurement inflation was little change in December, excluding, this is basically what we've all went over in our report there. Medical care, moreover, energy prices fell 3.5. Nothing new there. This is something we actually already knew about. Nothing new to come about. Let's go to the BBC now, and we'll get the markets from the old BBC. May, Brexit's failure risk trust in democracy. Well, I hate to tell her. Brexit is coming. Did I say Brexit? Brexit is coming. Urged MPs to back her deal, and it's Downing Street's alarmed by, says May. Well, May is basically done. Writing in the Sunday Express, May pled with MPs to back her Brexit deal in the crunch vote. That'll be in the Commons on Tuesday. Not doing so will risk the UK leaving the EU with no deal, Brexit not happening at all. Meanwhile, number 10 is said to be alarmed at the prospects of MPs taking control of Brexit if she loses the vote. In the Sunday Times, it reported a plan by a cross-party group of MPs to change the Commons rule to enable backbenchers' motions to take precedent over government business if she fails. This is May. One possible is that backbenchers could then legally compel the government to delay Brexit beyond the set departure date, a proposal some MPs have already called there. And it's previously thought only ministers could extend the 2-year. This is Article 50, the most important Article 50. And writing in the Sunday Express, May said the Commons vote on a Brexit withdrawal deal will be the biggest and most consequential decision that any MP of our generation will make. Well, we wonder. The former Prime Minister Major, known as Sir John, has said revoking Article 50 is the only sensible to take, but except this would be politically uncomfortable. Revoking 50, who led the country from 90 to 97, wrote his support for a second vote on UK membership in the EU, adding it would be morally reprehensible for the government to allow the UK to leave without a deal. The cost to our national well-being would be heavy and long-lasting. The benefits are close to zero. Every single household, rich or poor, would be worse off for many years to come. And this was a whole situation when it started to begin with. Meanwhile, the Labour London Mayor, Mr. Khan, has suggested that May should step down and call a general election if she loses the vote. Many have suggested that should occur. On to the business now. And big headline here, the shutdown, this is in the U.S., is the longest ever. And this is a good place to end it up here. Shows a farmer here. This is the longest one. There was a slightly over 20 days. We're in the longest, we in the U.S. in the longest ever, ahead of capital area food banks. Said dozens of volunteers were working to package your food for the affected staff. This is pathetic. And the only thing I can say about it is pathetic. You don't want to see this in a modern industrial country such as the U.S. to get down to it. World's largest aircraft are grounded. I think this is a Soviet one here. Oh, yeah. The Airlander 10, a combination of plane and airship, completed 6 test flights before it collapsed to ground in 2017. This may not be the one. Oh, okay. This is totally a different situation here. This is anyway. Why are we doing it? I was thinking of literally something else. The Soviets had a plane, and it's a plane, not some kooky deal here. On to the market data here. Yeah, let's get this going here. The FTSE was down 0.36 as the FTSE 100. In Amsterdam, they were at 0.18. In France, they were down 5.01. The DAC in Germany was down 0.31%. Neurostras was down 0.91. And in Spain, they were in the positive at 0.23. And let's see. In Bombay, they were at negative 0.27. Hang Seng in Hong Kong at 0.55 in the positive, and the Nikkei at 0.97. And let's go back and catch the U.S. on rebound here. The Dow was down 0.02, and the Nasdaq down 0.21, all in the negative. In Chicago, they were down 0.1% there. So that is the market, and we got at least somewhat of pork bellies in it. This will do it for us on the 13th of January 2019, our second report, I believe, of the year of 2019. One final item here. From the Bloomberg report, you can see there is already questionable action of the Fed. The Fed will have to consider this shutdown, and the shutdown is a purely political event. It has nothing to do with the economy as such. Therefore, the Fed will have to grapple with this. You have almost 1 million workers furloughed, a very, very large number of workers. And on top of that, you have what some have labeled the 10% effect. If you've noted, many companies, smaller companies, are laying off anywhere from 8 to 10% of their workforce, a realignment there. And you have at the same time all these layoffs of Ford and the larger ones laying off up to 10% of their workforce. So it does count up 10% here, 10% there. If the place has, say, 500 workers, they're laying off 10%. That's 50 workers would bite the dust, so to speak. But that has a ripple effect depending, obviously, on where the workers are placed. If all the workers in one central region, then you have that situation. But when you have in, say, Virginia, Maryland, Washington, D.C. area, and even into West Virginia, most people don't realize West Virginia has a lot of government workers there. That these people are laid off not only impacts the workers and their ability to pay their bills, but the people to whom they pay their bills and the local economy. So, for instance, West Virginia, we'll see this showing up. We'll see what Governor Justice has to say about it. And in Maryland and Virginia, and some of those communities hard hit, the buy local campaigners will be hit there. Not just the Verizon and the larger people, but all this will reflect on December and more into January receipts. So this is all across the economy. People will buy less. You have some government workers that have been there for 10 years that have a total of less than $20 in their checking accounts, which means they aren't buying anything. They're going to food shelves, whatever, trying to find part-time work. There is part-time work, and I'm assuming some are doing part-time work. Others applied for unemployment compensation, which they will eventually get. and there are rules there also. So those are some of the things that are impacting many, many things. And all this goes into the psychology of the market. It's just not about lower gas prices, but at the same gasoline prices or petrol prices at the same time. Heating costs, home heating costs has went up, and rents have went up. I think the last program we talked about vacancies in the Seattle area. There are vacancies in some other areas. The automobile market is pretty much stalled. The new cars aren't moving. The used cars aren't moving. People are not buying. So those are some of the things that are happening out in the quote-unquote real-time market, as opposed to what you see in the stock market, and particularly in the commodity market. A lot of speculation going on there. We'll see you next week. Have a good week, everyone. For those in business, make it a productive one. For the consumer, the eyes on the prize. Good day.